Hey folks, how's it going? Now we've covered most of the elements of a great British Sunday lunch here on the channel, playlist linked in the description, but so far we've missed out the main event, the delicious roast beef. Today I'm going to fix that as I share with you my no-fuss recipe for an epic beef joint that's worthy of the centre of any Sunday table, served with a sumptuous, unctuous gravy that's just to die for. You're going to want to have this recipe in your pockets come Sunday, my friends, and as always time is ticking, so let's get into it. We'll get started by preparing our beef, and this week I've got a nice piece of topside straight from a local butcher. This has been out of the fridge for a good hour to give it a chance to come up to room temperature before roasting. For evenly cooked roast, this is an essential step I don't recommend you skip. This piece is about 830 grams or 1.8 pounds, which will feed 3 or 4 people with very little left over. I'm going for medium, so using my usual rule of thumb of 25 minutes per half kilo, this will need about 40 minutes, but I usually find I need to add a few minutes with smaller joints, so I'll take no chances and use my meat thermometer. To prep this, I'll just pat it completely dry, give it a good squeeze of neutral high smoke point oil. I'm using rapeseed today, sunflower would work too. And next I add a good grip of cooking salt, making sure to season the whole surface and then giving it a good rub to ensure everything is coated. Don't be shy with the salt, we're seasoning a good sized hunk of meat here, plus the gravy we'll make later from the roasting juices. Next, I'll take this over to the hob where I've got a large flat pan over a high heat. I preheated this dry until almost hot enough to smoke, and in goes the meat. I'll give this a couple of minutes undisturbed on each side to get a good sear. Conventional wisdom is that this helps to seal in the juices, but I'm not totally convinced on the science behind that. What it will definitely do though is help build flavour. Especially with a small joint like this one, it just won't be in the oven for long enough to develop a good Maillard crust on the outside, so doing this up front gives us a good head start. That said, this can be kind of messy and it will definitely smoke up your kitchen. Make sure you've got your extraction switched on and be ready to silence your smoke alarms if, like me, you're in a modern house and some lunatic insisted on installing them in the kitchen. So just keep browning and turning, and if you haven't yet developed asbestos hands like me, use tongs to avoid burning yourself. Be sure to get all sides of the beef for maximal flavour, and that looks good. I'm just going to put this to one side until I'm ready to put it in the oven. If you didn't use a non-stick pan for this, the chances are you'll have developed some good fond on the pan. If it's not completely charred, then you could deglaze with some wine or water and retain it for the gravy, but do be careful. If it's burned, which is likely given the heat we're using here, then it will make your gravy super bitter and borderline inedible. Deglaze, let it cook, then give it a taste before adding it. Once it's in, there's no getting it out, so take care. With my non-stick pan, there's nothing burned on and all that's left is a little oil, so I'll just get rid of that. We'll have plenty of flavourful juices after roasting the beef anyway. Now, to prep my roasting tin, I'm just keeping it simple today. I'll roughly chop 1 brown onion into slivers and use those to build a little trivet to keep the meat off the bottom of the pan. Again, because I have a small joint, I can get away with a small pan. Use your best judgment here. You want your meat to have a bit of room to breathe, but the bigger the pan, the more onion you'll need to give it something to sit on. This doesn't have to be just onions, of course. I'll sometimes throw in a few very roughly chopped carrots. There's no need to peel them. Maybe some celery, even a few potatoes. Whatever you add here will add to the flavour of the gravy, and if you're feeling saucy, you could even chop a garlic bulb in half and throw that in too. You'll want some liquid in the pan. Another reason to have the onion trivet is to stop the meat sitting in this liquid. And you can use water, stock, or my personal favourite, red wine. Now, as usual, if you wouldn't drink it, don't cook with it, but there's no need to go nuts. Any half decent wine will do. Today I happen to have this 2021 California Merlot lying around, so that's what I'm using. A good glass goes in, just enough to cover the bottom of the pan and submerge the onions a bit. Notice there's a good bit of onion for the beef to sit on. These will shrink during cooking. It's kind of inevitable that your beef will end up at least touching the wine, and that's no big deal, but we want to keep it out for at least the first part of cooking. So to that, I'll add a good few glugs of Worcestershire sauce. Now don't be shy, the flavour will melt into the background of the gravy and become another layer in our flavour story, and a few sprigs of thyme. I'll make sure that that's in the wine to help the flavour infuse, and then on goes my beef, fat side up. I'm adding no more salt at this point, the beef will donate some, and we can adjust later as needed. As mentioned, I'm going to use my meat thermometer today. Home ovens vary and smaller joints often need slightly more or slightly less time to get perfect, so removing the guesswork is super helpful. If you don't have one of these, I really recommend you get one. I couldn't find this exact one online, but there's a link in the description to one that's very similar. Setting this up is simple, just gauge roughly halfway through the meat and use your thumb to mark that spot on the probe, and then insert it until your thumb touches the meat. This way you'll get the tip of the probe at roughly the centre point of the joint. If your meat's oddly shaped, aim instead to be in the middle of the thickest part. Once that's done, this goes into a preheated oven at 200 degrees C, about 400 F convection, slightly higher for conventional ovens, maybe 220 C or 430 F. For a joint this size, or really any joint that's going to cook in less than maybe 2 hours, we don't want to cover it. We want that outer crust, remember, and foil will actively work against us here. Once that's in the oven, set a timer for 20 minutes. And we'll make a start on our gravy. You'll want a good quality stock for this. I like this brand, others are available, hashtag not an ad. So that's 500 mils of stock into a medium saucepan, and I'll set that over a medium high heat to give it a kickstart. Once it begins to come to the boil, I'll lower the heat to low and let it simmer gently until reduced by maybe a half. 20 minutes later, it's time to lower the oven. I'll turn it down to 170 degrees C, about 340 F. If I didn't have a fan, I'd go with 180, 350 instead. I'll give the thermometer a glance at this point, but I'm not expecting too much just yet. With my stock just coming up to the boil, I'll add one of these small packs of gelatin. That's about 12 grams. I know some of you are thinking this seems weird, but gelatin is gelatin, whether it comes from gelatinizing collagen or opening one of these little packets. Adding this will help give our gravy that rich, unctuous mouthfeel you'd normally only get from boiling connective tissue for hours on end. So we'll just tip that in and give it a good whisk to thoroughly combine. It shouldn't clump when added to hot liquid, but we want to be doubly sure. Once combined, we'll let this hang out over lowish heat to simmer for a little while longer. After another 5 or 10 minutes, I'll prep a quick cornflour slurry. Now we want to slightly over thicken this gravy at this point, so that it comes back to the right consistency when we add the wine and the roasting juices later. So I'll just add 2 good heaped teaspoons of cornflour to a cup and dilute in just enough water to make a lump-free slurry. Once that's mixed up, I'll add it to the stock, whisking all the time, and I'll turn the heat up briefly to bring it back to a boil. Corn flour works by boiling and stirring, so plenty of both at this stage. Once that's developed a nice, slightly too thick consistency, I'll pull it off the heat and let it relax for a while until the meat is done. It'll thicken up further while it cools, but don't worry too much, we'll thin it back out later. 20 to 30 minutes after turning the oven down, my thermometer hits 63 degrees C, 145F, which is exactly what I'm looking for medium beef. The recipe down in the description does list various target temperatures for different donenesses depending on your liking, so be sure to check that out if medium isn't your thing. I'll pull the beef out of the oven and moving over to my board, I'll wrap it tightly and foil to rest. Now this will continue to carry over cook another 10 degrees or so, and I'm leaving the thermometer in at this point just to prove it. It'll also help me not lose a bunch of juice through the hole left by the probe, which would be a thing if I removed it now. I'll take the... Oh, did you tell them about the thumbs up in it? Did he tell you about the thumbs up? No? Can I? Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you. Go on then. So if you're liking the video, if you're finding it useful, I'd really appreciate if you give it a thumbs up, hit that like button down below. It really helps the channel. And that's it. Okay? Cheers. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt. I'll take the roasting juices over to my gravy and add them, being careful not to add any of the chunks of onion. If you find that the juices have reduced more than you expected in the oven, then you can add a little water too at this point, and this pan is just back over a low heat to warm through. Next, I'll give it a taste to check the seasoning. This is almost there but needs salt, so I'll add that and whisk it in. Adjust yours to taste and add some pepper too at this point if that's your thing. Cover this with the lid and leave it on a low heat until ready to serve, stirring occasionally if it's there for more than a few minutes. After about 10 minutes, the meat has come up to 72 degrees C internal, and I'm considering it done. If you have the time, this will only improve with further resting, but I have hungry people here, so I'm calling it. I'll carefully unwrap and remove the thermometer probe and then slice this as thin as practical with a very sharp carving knife before serving it with the gravy and the rest of my Sunday lunch essentials. I'll put a card here and a link in the description to the playlist that has the recipes for all of those. So that's it for today's video, folks. Enjoy that beef with that delicious gravy, whether it be for Sunday lunch or any other time of the week. I hope you give this a try. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you think, and thanks for watching the video. Keep on cooking, folks. See you next time.